we go, Slit Drift this axe eye. The piece is in the forge right now, and we will see you when it gets hot.
Welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of axe making, slit drifting the axe eye. But first, we have to forge this piece of 4140, which started out as about 3 inches long by 2 inches in diameter, down to a working shape, a cuboid, if you will. And we're going to be doing that on all 4 sides, getting it down. Now what you're seeing here is we're drawing down and out just like we normally would with like a hammer. It's the same process, just with a press, much faster. It would take 4, 5, maybe 6 times the amount of heats to get this amount of work done with a hand hammer. And it wouldn't be as uniform either. Right now it's starting to fish lip on us. We don't want it to suck in the center, and it's pushing the steel out over the center port here. So we're upsetting that back into itself. Now we've just done the 2 sides here. We're not really forging the ends here. We're just making sure that we're not creating any potential voids in the end of it. So we're going to take this down to, probably 1.5 inches wide, I guess you'd call it. Once again, back on the vertical here to make sure we're keeping everything straight and in line. We're not working with a lot of steel here. There's a lot of steel in this. To be able to make a good size axe out of this, but we need to make sure that we're not having to cut or grind any of the ends off, because we need all this steel. We need to have a strike plate on the end, and we need to have enough steel within the body of it to then press out to make the blade. Looks like we're going to be getting ready to go on, if that was the horizontal we've been working on, going on to the short side vertical. Yep, that's exactly what we're doing. Short side vertical here. I'm going to press this down, kind of flat spot the end of this heat right here. Alright, we're just kind of flat spotting this right here. Makes it a whole lot easier to get into, or to sit in your forge so it doesn't roll against the wall on one side. Then we have to keep on tending it in there. You can just set it right in the center of your hot spot and let it heat up. Now we're not taking this down to hard corners. We're going to leave the corners rounded, or like if we were going to forge that in, we'd be chamfering them. So we're just leaving them rounded. We don't want to, take this way down to where we have to actually sharp corners. We don't need that right now. Nice little through shot there on the press. This is a great shot. I need to film more when we're using the press from this angle right here. It's a really good shot. Nice and close. You can almost feel the heat coming off of that. It's pretty warm. It's a really nice shot. So once again, you get a really nice close-up look of what we're not really pressing that. We're just upsetting the higher elevated points of our blank here back into itself. And you can see how we almost have like what's an octagon shape here with the 8 flat sides or semi-flat sides. Those corner pieces aren't necessarily flat. Alright, here we go. We get our first use out of the slit drift that we made in the part 1 of this video series, and we're just going to be scoring this really on this first set here. That's all we're shooting for. Not shooting to really put a huge dent in this, just kind of score it so we have something to see when we get into the real heats. This is not hot enough, just hot enough to where we're not going to screw up our drift, because this is a hot steel drift. This is not a hard steel drift, or hard steel chisel, I guess you'd say. This is a hot steel. So when you flip it over, we're going to just mark that other side. And you can see how it wants to, right now, it's trying to flat spot it even more to square itself up, and so it's gonna rock and roll just a little bit back and forth. Not gonna want to sit in one space for you, so you really got to be careful. And you'll see just why here in the next heat or so. There it is right there. Bam. If you notice that really quick there, yes, that did fall in my water bucket. Yeah. And as you heard me say, that is not good. But we're using 4140. 4140 is a water quenchable steel. So what we did is we just heated it back up, kind of, and normalized it. Took some of those stressors out, and then we're back at doing this slit here. Now you see the flames coming off here wet, and you'll see me in other portions of this video where I'm sticking that slit drift into that can on the side of my anvil there. That can is full of beeswax, graphite, turpentine, and various other ingredients there to make sure that we're not overheating our punch. But it's what's called punch lube or drift lube, and it makes it so that it creates a barrier, an air gap barrier in between your drift or punch and the hot steel, so that it's not going to be not going to get stuck. And we're getting pretty far down in there. I mean, maybe a quarter inch so far. This is a long process. This is not like punching or anything like on, or even using a slit drift or a split drift or any kind of drift, cutting drift on a press or a power hammer. This is a slow process doing it yourself here. It might be a little quicker if you had a striker, but still, you'd have to have a really good striker to hit that center every time. So it takes a while. This is not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of hot steel, and just a lot of short hammer swings, very powerful hammer swings, but they're not these full gargantuan swings. You don't want to wear yourself out too quickly, because this is going to take a while. So here we are, a little bit farther in the process here, getting a little bit farther down there. We're about probably 3/4 of an inch into the main body of this axe. Now I'm not taking this all the way down in heat because I don't want to be standing around as much. So I take it down to where I can feel it start to get a little bit solid on me, and then, because you'll feel it. You'll feel when it's nice and it just wants to just slide in there and do a lot of work, and then you'll feel it start to tighten up and kind of bounce back on you, and that's when it's time to put back in the forge. Because you see it, it's still super hot. We're still sitting at about 1500 degrees right there, but you're actually wasting more energy than you're putting into it by trying to work it at that temperature. Now we're going to get ready to flip this on the other side. Now remember, we scored it on both sides when we went in here. We're getting to the point where we're starting to see what's called, when you're punching, it's called seeing the dime on there, and it looks just like a dime down there where your channel's coming through. Well, when you're doing a slit or a slot in this, it's really long. You start to see a rectangle on the bottom where your channel's coming through, and as soon as you start seeing that, you can start going through that other side. Now you also see here I'm rotating the drift, because this isn't precision ground, and so one side's going to be slightly different than the other. And so every time I go in and out of the water, I'm rotating that drift around so that I'm getting a nice straight channel cut in here. And you can see me rotating in my hand really quick as soon as I put it, before I put it in the back in that slot to do another pass. Now that's not as important in the early rounds. You want to make sure you get your drift in there a ways before you actually need to start rotating. Alright, here we go. We flipped it over. Now we found our score mark on there. Now we're starting back through the other side. Now I continued to flip it back and forth even though I didn't need to, but when you have, it's starting to move really, really nice because we have kind of a void underneath our drift that we're pushing in, and it's actually pushing steel back into the channel we cut on the other side. Now, what you will notice is as we get closer to cutting through in there, I'll start taking this colder and colder to help, work that open inside that channel. And I'll be going from, I'll go through one side and then I'll turn it and then I'll go through the other side. Now all I'm doing to cool this down is dip that drift in water and then go into the can. But I don't go into the can of the punch and drift lube all the time. See, it's starting to want to walk on me and skeet out from underneath the hammer and drift. It's because it's getting cold. When it's nice and hot, it'll tend to want to stay in place. When it starts to get too cold to actually do anything, it'll start to bounce and start to skate across your end or whatever striking surface you're striking on. So you just want to kind of just stick there. You can see as it cools down, it starts to want to move a little more. That slit drift really turned out great. It really did a nice job. And here we get the turn. We're going to start going back through the other side. We're starting to get a little bulge on the inside of there, where we're cutting through on the other side. So we're just going to come down through on this side, continue to rotate the drift in my hand, and we'll do a few on this side. Then we'll probably, I think we flip it over again, and we're going to just keep on working that back and forth until we get an opening. You don't have to, and I highly suggest you don't try and push this slit drift through that opening. That's what you have your other drifts for, is for widening that opening out. You just want to create an opening in there so that you can then push the other drift through it. Starting to get a little stuck. Use some of that lube on there. And this is where it starts to heat up a little bit, because we're starting to cut through there. This is where you tend to really destroy equipment. If you get your drifts stuck in there and you're not careful about it, you will end up destroying them and spend almost all your time rebuilding. Now the little dome inside there is kind of off. That's why we have our drift at an angle. I'm pushing that all back, kind of center. One more heat here, and we're going to be through. Another reason to wear the glove. It gets hot next to this steel, but you see those flames coming up. If I didn't have the glove on there, that'd be quite painful. Real close to coming through. So this whole process was split over 2 days. But the total smithing time involved here to get this split down through, probably an hour and a half. It had about 40 minutes of video time that was shot, and we were able to get this through. And here we go. Let's see here. One more pass. We're real close. And here we go. There we are. Nice little hole through there. Take it easy. We'll see you on the next.